Welcome back to the Best of Muscle magazine. The pro debut of superstar Eddie Robinson has helped to establish his presence as one of the most popular bodybuilders in the sport. John Kovic describes the action at the Gold's Gym Pro Invitational from Niagara Falls.
Among the grandeur of one of Mother Nature's greatest creations goes a call throughout the community of bodybuilding for some of its best-built bodies. The Gold's Gym Pro Invitational made its historic return to Niagara Falls this year with the very best professionals vying to qualify for the Mr. Olympia. It was a lineup and comparison of monstrous proportions, with veterans like powerful Danny Padilla from Rochester, known as the best little big man ever to walk onto the posing dais. Then newcomer David Dearth, just off his big win at the Men's Nationals, making his pro debut. This time he'd be up 20 pounds from last October. As usual, near local favorite Canadian Steve Brisbois packed some mighty muscle in his attempt to battle Padilla. But of course, there was the man everyone was waiting for, Big Eddie Robinson, on his first professional outing. He was out to tear up the competition, and nothing was going to get in his way. The afternoon pre-judging session was thorough and handled diligently by IFBB Vice President Wayne D'Amelia. The comparisons and mandatory rounds helped the audience make their own decisions as to who would be in the top 5. By nightfall, suspicions would quickly turn to confirmation as one of the most overwhelming assemblies of 12 top pro bodybuilders took the stage. Starting the night was the ageless Albert Beckles, who is an example of fitness at nearly 60 years old that some of today's teenagers can't even match. The Barbados native has had his share of wins over his many years of weight training, including some Olympic lifting. Unfortunately, Albert was too smooth for Niagara Falls, showing little striations and very few deep muscle separations needed on the pro ranks. He placed 12th and scored 164 points from the judges. Surprising the crowd was a poor showing by a once great amateur champion, Phil Hill, who has grown immensely since his heavyweight win at the 1987 Men's Nationals. It was a major disappointment to see Phil so smooth. In fact, you could have almost called him fat by bodybuilding standards. Although you might remember that Phil nearly won this same event last year, he only placed 11th and scored an unimpressive 156. From the Carolinas came former 1988 middleweight national champion Quincy Roberts. This soft-spoken pro has great body symmetry, having been blessed with a light structure. But in the 2 years since his move to the pros, Quincy still is competing at only 175 pounds. Okay, so he's only 5'4", but to knock heads with the big boys, this guy's got to add mass badly.
I trained to get in shape and wasn't worried about the weight, and I feel that because you don't have to weigh in, it's a little more fair on people. It's lighter weight because the judges can't really tell how much you weigh when you're on stage, and they compare you more on your physique. And then on this guy weighs 200 and this guy weighs 175.
One of 3 muscle men making their pro debut was Canadian John Sembeda from Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. John qualified to become a pro by winning the light heavyweight division at last year's Powerhouse Gym's North American Championships in Las Vegas. And to get there, he won the Canadian Championships, but notably by default. The 5'10" bodybuilder exhibited first-rate muscle quality, cuts with amazingly low body fat. But like Quincy Roberts, John needs to gain some heavy-duty body size if he intends to continue making a career in professional bodybuilding. He placed 9th and scored 129. Just in front was a newcomer to the American continent with Samoan-born Australian raised Sonny Schmidt. Out of everyone competing, Sonny probably had the most staggering potential, standing 5'9" and weighing over 233 pounds. The 36-year-old Australian champion had competed down under for many years before turning professional. The last great Aussie to sail on the pro level was John Terrilli, who recently moved back to Sydney after a less than shining 2-year career in the States. However, Sonny has a broad, thick, and athletic build, the kind that Americans like. Sonny will be headed toward the Night of Champions, hoping to qualify for the Mr. Olympia. He placed 8th and scored 126. British champion Bernard Seeley was another newcomer to American shores. He was ripped and had great muscle separation. His symmetry needs some attending to, especially in the calf department, but nothing that can't be trained and developed. Bernard placed 7th and scored 113. Another former Canadian champion was Toronto native Henderson Thorne. This was his second jab in Niagara Falls, so he came into it much harder and better prepared. Henderson is a full-time gym instructor at a local Gold's Gym. He's a natural light heavyweight, but crept over 220 pounds for the first time, presenting a much thicker appearance. Henderson placed 6th and scored an even 100. Moving into the top 5, Steve Brisbois, who's always a favorite with the Canadian audiences, really demonstrated some sizable growth in one short year. The 26-year-old has great body balance, especially for being only 5'3" and weighing 160 pounds. Steve always leaves people impressed, even if he has a tougher time winning because of his stature.
As a pro, I've been competing against guys that are always taller than I am, except for Danny Padilla. I guess he's probably the shortest bodybuilder in the world besides myself. But yeah, sometimes we seem it's a disadvantage, but if you're smaller, there are times you do stand out if you have a good complete physique, which I think I do have. But again, the size factor plays a big role, and you know, I just can't put 20, 30, 40 pounds extra on my body. It's just way too much.
The Scandinavian representative in Niagara Falls was Andreas Collings, who was ripped to the bone despite his slightly blocky structure. Andreas has been around for at least 10 years, always making a good showing and wooing the support from the audience. However, the 5'8" lifter had a serious disfigurement on the side of his face, almost looking as if someone had bitten off his ear. There was extensive stitches and swelling. Well, no matter how something like that had occurred, Andreas placed 4th and scored an 83. A real surprise for the Niagara Falls audience was the pro debut of last year's middleweight national champion, David Dearth. Since his win, Dave has taken the painstaking task of double-session workouts, 6,000 to 7,000 calorie diets, and creating a physique that was over 20 pounds heavier and just as conditioned. This guy's got all the potential of any other top-level professional. And at 26 years of age, he's a young whippersnapper in terms of bodybuilding.
It was really nerve-wracking, you know, seeing the guys in the magazine and thinking that I was going to compete with them. It was really hard on me mentally to prepare for this because I didn't know what to expect. But like any good competitor, once you get on stage, you get hungry again and you just forget about the next guy and worry about getting everything together yourself. So I'm real comfortable now.
Then came the heartwarming routine of the night, the long-awaited return of Danny Padilla. After a near 5-year layoff and a foiled attempt to compete last year at the Night of Champions, Danny renewed his crown as the master of the size and shape. Standing a mere 5'2", the Rochester, New York native packed an amazingly muscular build of 182 pounds. And with his year of daily dedicated training, Danny has quality muscle. Remember, he started making his mark in bodybuilding while training with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, and Lou Ferrigno. Pound for pound, it's a nearly perfect body. It was good to see the comeback kid.
Competition-wise, I really retired from the sport. I felt I was getting a little old. I am 39 now. I thought the sport is unfair because of the fact that, you know, I'm 5'2". How can I compete against Lee Haney? You know, the possibility's not there. So I kind of backed off. But I have a training partner, Rick Benedetto, who had surgery. You know, they told him you could never lift weights again. It's all over for you. I told him, if you come train with me and you enter the contest, then I'll enter the pro show with you. And so here I am, and he's out there tonight, and he looks pretty damn good, so I'm going to do the best for him.
Okay, here's the guy everyone's talking about, Big Eddie Robinson. Some are saying he's the newest sensation on the professional scene, and at almost 220 pounds and only 5'7", it's easy to see why. For some reason, Eddie's got what's known on bodybuilding judging panels as the complete package, the size, the looks, and the brains. His training is relentless, performing double split sessions 6 days a week, and his diet consists of 0 fats. And check out this posing routine. Talk about creativity, style, power, and impact. And all of this in just his very first pro event.
It was a little scary being my first pro debut, competing against Albert Beckel and Danny Padilla, people that I idolized coming up into the sport. Basically, it was an honor to be on stage with these gentlemen, and talking to them backstage, pumping up with them was a dream of mine to come true. The only personal goal I had.
There's a new service available to viewers.